What's up, guys? Welcome to the Chess Giant. This is Solomon Riddell, and some of you may have heard of the Italian game before, but if you haven't, it's one of the best chess openings for white, probably my personal favorite, and it's also one of the oldest chess openings of all time, played by many grandmaster players with a very strong track record, and it all starts with e4. And after e5, now knight f3 from white, naturally developing the knight, attacking that centralized pawn on e5, and after knight c6, bishop c4. This is the move order that I prefer, and following the move bishop c5, we now see d3 and knight c3. Now, guys, I actually made a video on the Italian game and its strategy, principles, theories, moves, ideas, tricks, and tips, etc. And I'll leave that down in the description below, just so that you guys can really be prepared for anything that comes your way. But guys, in this video, we're not just going to go over the theory and the variations. We're going to see this opening come to life. We're going to see this opening in action as we go over a brilliant game played by none other than Mikhail Chigorin, one of the best Italian game players of all time, as he played against Manuel Sterling back in the year of 1900 in the city of Paris. Now, in this game in particular, Chigorin went with a slightly different move order, with knight c3 going into the three knights variation, and then bishop c4 transposing into the Italian game, and then d3. But needless to say, guys, we reached this same position. And guys, I really do think that this game highlights how to play this opening at a high level. White doesn't have to do anything crazy or out of the ordinary. White just has to play solid developmental chess, activate the pieces, and try to gain a space advantage. Now, in this position, Sterling, playing with black, played h6, a very strong move and really a key move, stopping white from coming to this g5 square. Black has to be very careful of not allowing white to play bishop g5, followed by knight d5, and then taking that knight on f6, in which many cases I think white has a clearly better, if not one game. So by playing h6, Sterling is preventing Chigorin from playing bishop g5. And now we see Chigorin go with bishop e3, a very strong move, naturally developing the bishop and attacking that bishop on c5. Here, black really has two options. Well, really three. Black can play bishop b6, retreating the bishop. Black can play bishop e4, attacking that knight on c3. And black can take the bishop on e3. Now here, I personally think that bishop b6 offers black the strongest results. But here we see bishop takes e3 from Sterling. And after f takes e3, we now see d6, both sides just naturally developing their pieces here. But now white has a pretty tough decision. Does white put the queen on d2, or does white put the queen on e2? Guys, I've been playing this opening for years. I've been playing this opening for about 15 years now, a decade and a half. And until seeing this game, I really didn't know which one was better. I mean, at least during my lifetime, I just didn't really see the difference. I mean, the queen on d2 isn't doing much, and the queen on e2 doesn't seem to be doing much. But from this game, I learned that queen e2 is by far the better option. And really, guys, the purpose of queen e2 is two-sided. First off, it protects the knight on f3 in case of bishop g4, in which we can now play h3. And guys, the truth is, after bishop takes f3, we can actually take with the queen or the pawn. And as time has gone on, I actually prefer g takes f3, opening up that g file and opening up potential f4 and d4 ideas. But queen takes f3 is a total good, strategically logical move. And after h3, if bishop h5, we can now continue to make space on the board with g4, and following bishop g6, go with a3, opening up that a2 square for the bishop, and white has a very good game here with a strong space advantage. So guys, that was one potential purpose of queen e2, is to defend that knight on f3 if you don't want to take with the g-pawn. The second and most important purpose is to protect the bishop on c4, preparing a d4 push. Guys, here Sterling played knight a5, which is oftentimes a key idea for black against the Italian game, looking to get rid of the very strong bishop on c4, attacking the weak f7 pawn. And guys, usually we'd have to play a move like bishop e3, but now we're able to play d4, advancing in the center of the board, creating some space, and also, with the queen, protecting that bishop on c4. Now in this game, we see e takes d4 from Sterling, and after e takes c4, knight takes c4, black taking the opportunity to snatch that bishop off the board. And here, guys, after queen takes c4, Sterling castled kingside, and we now see castle kingside from Chigorin. And guys, really in this position, I think castling queenside or kingside is both valid options. I personally kind of like castling queenside and then trying to attack in the center of the board, breaking through with e5, or in some variations, even trying to aggressively go after the king on g8. But here we see castle kingside, which I think is probably the technically best move. And it also allows the rook to be on the f-file. Guys, in chess, we want to put our rooks on the open files. See, this rook on f1 wouldn't be doing much on c1 or b1 or h1 or g1. But on f1, it's very active, putting pressure on the knight on f6, and we're going to see this pay off later in this game. Here, black played bishop e6, attacking the queen on c4, and Chigorin didn't passively play a move like queen d3 or queen e2 or even queen b4, attacking that pawn on b7. Here, Chigorin played d5, advancing in the center of the board, attacking the bishop on e6, and after bishop d7, again continuing to create space with e5. Guys, here white has a clear advantage in space. A pawn on d5, a pawn on e5, a very strong queen on c4, a strong knight pair, and a strong rook on f1, including a rook on a1 that isn't doing much right now, but we'll bring this rook to d1 or e1 later in this game and make an active piece out of that rook. Now here Sterling took that pawn on e5, and after knight takes e5, played a6. And guys, in chess, there's really 4 rules or steps to the opening in general. The first one is putting a pawn in the center. Chigorin in this game did that the very first move by playing e4. The second step is to castle. Now, as we see, Chigorin did that. The third step is to allow the rooks to see each other, aka get all the other pieces out of the way. As you guys can see, the rooks can totally see each other. And the fourth step is to point a rook towards the opponent's king or queen. And we see this with rook a d1. I actually made a video on the 4 steps of the opening, and this might be helpful for you beginner chess players just trying to get a good understanding of the opening without studying hundreds and hundreds of hours of opening theory. And I'll leave that in the description below. But needless to say, here Chigorin played rook a d1, directing the rook towards the opponent's king or queen in this situation. And guys, really what this does is it allows white to have some future possibilities concerning variations. We just never know when things are going to break open, and it never hurts to have your rooks locked and loaded, ready to go. Now here black followed suit by playing rook c8, pointing its rook towards the queen on c4. And now we see white get that queen out of the way by playing queen d4, centralizing the queen. And we now see bishop e8 from Sterling. Guys, I actually think that bishop e8 was a slight mistake. Now, if you look at the bishop on d7, it's pretty awkwardly placed. Now, it looks active, but at the same time, it can't really do much. It can't go to e6. It would be taken. It can't go to f5. It'd be taken by the rook. g4, we could take it with the knight. h3, thank you for the bishop. Bishop c6, oh, thank you for the bishop again. Bishop b5 looks awkward, and bishop a4 is simply hanging the bishop. So here, guys, the bishop might look active, but it's also not doing much. So that's probably why Sterling went with bishop e8, just trying to make that bishop do something valuable, at least defending the pawn on f7. But guys, I actually think that bishop b5 was the best move here. And guys, I totally understand why Sterling was probably not too fond of this bishop b5 move. I mean, knight takes b5 is an option, and on top of that, guys, the bishop on b5 is just kind of awkwardly placed. But I do think that it's a whole lot better than on e8. And guys, even after a move like rook f5 and rook e8 and queen f4, followed by a move like queen d6, yes, I would still give the clear advantage to white, but it's not completely winning. In fact, some computer programs have only a 0.16 advantage for white here, as black is slowly starting to crawl back into this game. A solid queen on d6, a strong rook on e8, and an awkward bishop on b5, but at least it's doing something. Instead of this, Sterling put the bishop on e8, and it gave black a very cramped game. Now guys, following bishop e8, we now see rook f3 from Chigorin. I really do like this move from Chigorin. And really, guys, it gives white flexibility in this game. This rook can come to d3. The rook on d1 can come to f1, creating a battering ram against the knight on f6. This rook can also come to g3, directing some pressure on that g7 pawn. So I really do like this rook f3 move, just slowly improving the positioning of the pieces. And after queen d6, here black is trying to get back in this game. And Sterling really would like to play queen b6, making it so that the queen on d4 would be pinned to the king on g1, and we would have to trade down into an endgame. Guys, in chess, if you are in a cramped position, you want to trade down so that your pieces have more room to move and operate. And if you're ahead in space, if you have more space of the board, in particular this position where white has a strong pawn on d5, a knight on e5, and black's position is pretty cramped, we actually don't want to trade down because we want our opponent to be cramped and we want our opponent's pieces to not be very active. So here, Chigorin goes with knight c4, attacking the queen on b6 and also defending that square on b6. Absolutely beautiful move. And after queen d7, we now see Chigorin let loose with rook takes f6. Crazy move. And really, guys, after g takes f6, we could take on f6 with the queen, and white would still be better. But here Chigorin plays knight e4. Absolutely devastating move, looking to take on f6 with the knight. Right now, threatening a fork, checking the king on g8 and attacking the queen on d7. And guys, there's really not much black can do to stop knight takes f6. I mean, this bishop on e8 literally cannot move. This rook on f8 cannot move. The rook on c8 isn't doing much. And because of this, Sterling tries to muster up some kind of counterplay in defense with queen f5. But we now see rook f1. Again, strong strategic play from Chigorin here. The rook right now isn't really doing a ton. It's not a bad rook by any means, but it's not doing a ton. Why not put it on f1, attack the queen on f5, and put even more pressure on that pawn on f6? And after queen g6, we now see knight takes f6 with check, and following king h8, the beautiful move, knight e5, guys. I mean, look at the activity of white's pieces here. Yes, black is technically ahead in material, as black got a rook for only a knight and a pawn, but it was completely worth it. I mean, look at the rook on f1. Very strong piece, a centralized queen on d4, and a very strong knight pair on e5 and f6. And following queen takes c2, we see that the king on h8 is very exposed. Chigorin realized this, and he also realized that the queen on c2 is probably black's best defender. I mean, the bishop on e8 isn't doing much. The rook on f8, I mean, I guess it's technically a defender, but it can't really move. I mean, if you go to g8, the knight just takes it. So the rook on f8 is pretty much useless. But the queen on c2 does have eye on the b1 to h7 diagonal. So here we see knight d3 completely cutting off any activity from this queen on c2, as it cannot even see past that d3 knight now. And here black played c5 out of desperation, trying to muster up some counterplay, but white wasn't going to play a move like d takes c6 and pasani the pawn. Instead, Chigorin went with queen e4, a very strong move, and now we see queen h7 checkmate being threatened, and there's nothing that black can do about this. So Sterling resigned, and Chigorin won this game. If you'd like to learn more on the theory behind the Italian game, click the video to the left. If you'd like to explore more chess openings in general, click the playlist to the right. Leave a comment to let me know what other videos you'd like to see covered on this channel. And as always, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.